What's up guys? Hope you're doing well today. Today's video is going to be a bit of a shorter one, but that's just because I honestly don't really have that much to cover, unfortunately. The first two trains we're going to be covering are from June 18th, 2026. On this day I was at a dinner event in some building in downtown Wichita that has an airplane inside of it, and during dinner I looked out the window and noticed a train coming. This was the UP MWTFW, a daily manifest from Wichita, Kansas to Fort Worth, Texas. The only interesting thing about this train was that the third unit was a fairly new AC-44C6M, but other than that it was just a standard UP train with pretty boring power. I only saw one other train at this dinner event, which was the BNSF Barstow to Kansas City manifest that I filmed with my mom's phone. A few days later, on Sunday, June 21st, my friend the Train Whisperer invited me down to the hump for his birthday party, so I decided to go. The first train we would see would come as soon as I arrived. It was an eastbound BNSF vehicle train with a GBO and a Dash 9. I unfortunately don't know the symbol for this one. You know, I see a lot of comments making fun of people for shooting trains backlit and shooting, quote, directly into the sun, but I'm gonna show you guys. Oh, we got one of these things. Those are like rare or something. Anyways, I'm gonna show you guys what shooting directly into the sun actually is. It would be several hours before the next train came by, as you can tell by the change in lighting, which was an empty grain train of 3 GBOs running 1 by 2. The last train we would all see on this evening was the UP LVB-60 heading down to Arc City. I've never talked about it before, but this is actually a very interesting train. The reason this train exists is because there's a flour mill in Arkansas City. This flour mill is along the BNSF, but a contract that I believe goes back into the days of the Missouri Pacific means that BNSF doesn't serve the flour mill, Union Pacific does. So this train goes to Arc City, switches the flour mill, and then goes back north. However, this train also exists to interchange with the South Kansas and Oklahoma Railroad in Winfield. So on its way back north from Arc City, it backs into the SKOL yard at Winfield, does interchange, and continues back to Wichita. It usually leaves Wichita at about 9:30 at night on Sunday through Thursday, and it usually returns back at about 4 in the morning. Power on this evening was the typical fare of 2 GP60s. Given that Sunday evening is the first day of the week that this train runs, it's no surprise that it was over a mile long on this day, with most of the cars being cars for the flour mill. A few days later, on Thursday, June 25th, I was watching the virtual railfan camera in Wichita to see if the KO UP interchange train had an interesting consist. And, going north, the UP interchange job had a lash up of WAMX 4031, 3827, 4035, and 4008. As you can see here, the 4031 and the 4008, which you can't really see in this picture but was trailing fourth, are both Canada Cab GP40s. K&O has a lot of these, but no two are the same. And the other thing about them is that because they're wide cabs, they kinda suck for switching, because you can't really see the ground that well if you're the engineer. So K&O prefers to keep these running from Hutchinson west, because there's a lot less switching to be done out there than there is in the Wichita metro area, where there's a lot of industries. However, because the Federal Railroad Administration exists and locomotives need to be inspected, every few months each Canada Cab has to return to Wichita to get inspected. Or if they break, they come as well. So you're probably wondering, If they just come for inspection, why are they going up the hump? Well, there's a few easy answers to that question. The first answer to that question is the crews like running different stuff. Up until about 3 years ago, K&O used to have everything going everywhere. There was no assigned power. The Kingman line didn't only have GP39s. The Canada cabs were quite literally everywhere. Every day, the interchange jobs on the hump had the craziest consists imaginable. But then in 2023, everything changed. The Kingman line got assigned the GP39s. The road units got assigned to the road trains. The GP38s and the GP40 Canada cabs got banished out west. The standard GP40 pair got banished to Wichita. And so seeing varied power on any trains was kinda hard to do. So if the crews have an opportunity to run something different, you bet your butt they're gonna take it. The second reason is because it's the first power at the ready. The way K&O stores power at Orient Yard is kind of interesting. They have one track for all the power, the broken units and the good units. However, that track is also shared with an industry. So if there are cars in the industry and broken locomotives in the power track, power on the east end can't very well be accessed. So they just take whatever's on the west end. If the yard crew had put some Canada cabs that have just been inspected there, and an interchange job needs to run, they're gonna just take the Canada cabs because it's the easiest stuff to get to. The power track issue also occasionally leads to power getting parked in the Star Lumber Spur, which is kind of funny. It makes sense because it's a not very frequently served industry, so parking engines there doesn't really inhibit any operations. Plus, stuff in the lumber spur usually gets moved pretty soon after it's put there, so it's never a big problem to park anything in there. I believe what was happening on this day was that the 4031 and the 3827 came out of the lumber spur and the other two came out of the power track. Regardless of how this consist was built, it was worth going to see. And even though it was storming, I headed trackside. I sat at the hump for about an hour waiting for a train that had been lined on track 1 to pass. Track 1 is the far track at the hump and is the only track that K&O can use because there's no crossover switch from track 1 to track 2 at South Junction. The signal indication was red over green, making me think it would be BNSF's Local 9, but nope, it actually ended up being the KO wick. The KO wick is the BNSF interchange job that goes on duty at 7 p.m., so seeing it on the hump at noon is quite novel. Power on this day was the Kingman GP39s with 3934, my least favorite K&O motor, leading, and the consist was made up of a single plastic pellet hopper from the aforementioned industry by Orient Yard and 19 chemical tankers from OxyChem southwest of town. As soon as the BNSF job cleared, the signal at South Junction turned flashing red, which meant the UP interchange job was starting to head home. Of course, power for this train was that lovely quartet of mismatched EMDs with the two Canada cabs sandwiching the GP40 and the GP38. Always good to see the power from out west running on the hump. This train also had a healthy variety of cars, with lots of chemical tankers, center beams, and even a Western Pacific grain hopper. Even though the target of the day was gone, I decided to stick around for a bit longer because SKOL 302 was getting close. SKOL 302 is a South Kansas and Oklahoma manifest that runs from Winfield up to Wichita and back every Monday through Friday. Its main purpose is to transfer cars between the SKOL and the K&O. It also works the Cornejo facility on the southeast side of Wichita. This train is one of the most unique trains that SKOL runs due to the fact that it requires the locomotives that lead it to have PTC, and it also has to perform a runaround when it gets to Wichita. This day was no exception, and as it pulled into Wichita, the engines uncoupled to do their runaround. Leading on this day was WAMX 4199, one of just 3 SD40-2s left on the SKOL that has its original logo still intact. And with that, my day of rail fending was over. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.